Welcome, dear listeners, to Mysteries Unveiled, where the shadows of the past come alive through the timeless tales of detection and intrigue. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a gripping adaptation of Agatha Christie's classic, reimagined as Hercule Poirot's Poison Dumb Witness Case. Whether you're a long-time fan of the Belgian sleuth or new to his world of little grey cells, settle in for a journey of suspense, secrets, and shocking revelations. Imagine a foggy English estate where an elderly widow senses death lurking in every teacup, her only ally a loyal terrier who can't speak but sees everything. Enter Hercule Poirot, the master detective, unraveling a tangled web of family betrayals, hidden poisons, and motives as dark as midnight. Will he expose the killer before the final dose strikes? This isn't just a mystery. It's a pulse-pounding race against cunning evil that will leave you questioning everyone you trust. Stay tuned. The clues are about to drop. Chapter 1. The enigmatic invitation. The fog clung to the cobblestones of Baker Street like a shroud, muting the clamour of horse-drawn carriages and the distant hoot of a steamer on the Thames. It was an evening in late autumn, when the chills seeped through even the sturdiest wool coats, and Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a moustache as impeccably waxed as his reputation was unassailable, sat by the fire in his modest apartment. His companion, Captain Hastings, had stepped out for a brisk walk, leaving Poirot to savour a tisane of chamomile and reflect on the peculiarities of human nature. The room was a sanctuary of order, polished silver, symmetrically arranged bookshelves, and a clock that ticked with metronomic precision. A sharp rap at the door shattered the tranquillity. Georges, Poirot's unflappable valet, entered bearing a silver tray with a single envelope. "A letter for you, monsieur. Delivered by hand, no return address." Poirot's eyes, sharp as obsidian, narrowed as he took the missive. The paper was thick, cream-coloured, embossed with a faint crest, a stylized oak tree, perhaps symbolizing resilience or antiquity. He slit it open with a pearl-handled knife, unfolding the contents with deliberate care. The handwriting was elegant but tremulous, betraying age or agitation. "My dear Monsieur Poirot, I write to you in desperation, having heard of your unparalleled acumen from a mutual acquaintance in Brussels. I am Emily Arundell, widow of the late General Arundell, residing at Little Green House in Market Basing. My family surrounds me, yet I am besieged by shadows. I fear for my life. Subtle poisons lurk in the air I breathe, the food I consume. Come at once, I implore you. Discretion is paramount. Trust no one but my faithful Bob. Remuneration shall be generous. Yours in peril." Emily Arundell. Poirot stroked his moustache, his little grey cells whirring like the gears of a Swiss watch. Poison, familial deceit. And who was this Bob? A servant? A confidant? The letter's urgency resonated. It was no prank. He rose, summoning Georges. "Pack my valise, mon ami. We depart for Market Basing on the morning train, and inform Hastings. He may join if he wishes, though this seems a matter for subtlety, not his enthusiastic bluster." By dawn, the train chugged through the English countryside, fields dappled with frost under a leaden sky. Poirot, attired in a tailored overcoat and Homburg hat, gazed out the window, piecing together fragments. Market Basing was a quaint village nestled in Berkshire's rolling hills, far from London's intrigue, yet poison knew no boundaries. It was the weapon of the cunning, the patient. Hastings, seated opposite, fidgeted. "Sounds dashed mysterious, Poirot. An old widow fearing poison. Probably indigestion from too much plum pudding." Poirot smiled enigmatically. Ah, Hastings, you underestimate the human capacity for malice. The letter speaks of family, where love and greed entwine like ivy on a crumbling wall. They arrived at Little Green House as twilight encroached once more, the estate emerging from a veil of mist like a spectre from folklore. The house was a sprawling Georgian manor, its ivy-clad facade whispering of faded grandeur. Gravel crunched under their boots as they approached the oak door, flanked by stone lions weathered by time. A butler, gaunt and solemn as an undertaker, admitted them. Miss Arundell awaits in the drawing room. This way, gentlemen. The interior was a labyrinth of polished wood and antique tapestries, the air heavy with the scent of beeswax and lavender. Voices drifted from an adjoining room, laughter tinged with strain. Poirot's keen ears caught snippets. Aunt Emily's being dramatic again, a woman's voice murmured, followed by a man's chuckle. As long as the will favours us, let her rave. They entered the drawing room, a chamber bathed in the golden glow of oil lamps. Emily Arundell sat enthroned in a high-backed chair, her frame frail but her eyes blazing with vitality. She was in her 70s, silver hair pinned in a severe bun, dressed in black bombazine that rustled like dry leaves. At her feet lay a wire-haired terrier, Bob, his ears perked, gaze unwavering. Monsieur Poirot. Emily's voice was a whip crack, belying her fragility. Thank God you've come. These vultures circle, waiting for my demise. Poirot bowed with continental flair. Madame, I am at your service. This is my associate, Captain Hastings. Emily waved a gnarled hand. Sit, both of you. Tea will be brought. But mind you, taste nothing without my approval. Her relatives hovered nearby, a striking young woman with raven hair and emerald eyes, Teresa Arundell, the niece, and her brother Charles, a handsome rogue with a gambler's smirk. A companion, Miss Lawson, plump and fluttering, bustled about, while Dr. Tanios, a Greek physician, married to Emily's other niece Bella, lingered in the shadows, his olive skin and dark beard lending an exotic air. As tea arrived on a silver service, Poirot observed the dynamics. Teresa poured with graceful precision, but her fingers trembled slightly. Charles lounged against the mantel, lighting a cigarette with nonchalance. Auntie, really, inviting detectives. We're family, not suspects. Emily's lips thinned. Family. You've bled me dry with your investments and scandals. And you, Teresa, with your modern ways, gallivanting in London, consorting with artists. She turned to Poirot. It began months ago. Headaches, nausea after meals. I dismissed it as age, but then dreams of intruders, a bitter tang in my nightcap. Last week, I awoke to Bob growling at the door. Something's amiss. Bob, as if on cue, lifted his head, a low rumble escaping his throat. Poirot knelt, extending a hand. The dog sniffed, then wagged his tail, a seal of approval. Ah, the dumb witness. He sees what we overlook. Hastings cleared his throat. Perhaps a medical examination, madam. Dr. Tanios stepped forward, his voice smooth as olive oil. I've checked her vitals, nothing abnormal. Nerves, perhaps. Emily snorted. Your potions do little good. I trust Poirot's instincts more. As conversation ebbed, Poirot's gaze roamed. On a sideboard, a crystal decanter gleamed. Beside it, a vial of tonic, misplaced or deliberately so. He feigned interest in a porcelain figurine, inching closer. The label read, Arsenic tonic for nervous debility. Arsenic, in minute doses. Therapeutic, in excess, lethal. Dinner followed in the dining hall, a feast of roast pheasant and claret, but tension crackled like static. Teresa bantered with Charles, About a recent horse race, their laughter forced. Miss Lawson fussed over Emily's plate, while Bellatanios, pale and mousy, picked at her food. Poirot sampled sparingly, his palate detecting no anomalies. Yet, post-dinner, in the library, Emily drew Poirot aside. Bookshelves loomed like sentinels, firelight dancing on leather spines. "They're after my fortune," she whispered. "The general left me everything. Charles gambles it away. Teresa squanders on frivolities. Even Tanios eyes my shares in his dubious clinic." Poirot nodded. "Evidence, madam. Clues?" She hesitated. "Last night my tea tasted off, metallic. And Bob, he barked at shadows in the hall. Check my room. Perhaps you'll find something." Upstairs, her bedroom was a bastion of Victorian propriety. Four-poster bed, lace curtains, a nightstand with remedies. Bob trotted in, nosing the carpet. Poirot examined the teacup from earlier. Residue clung to the rim. He sniffed. Faint, acrid, not chamomile alone. A floorboard creaked outside. Hastings, standing guard, whispered, "Someone's lurking." Poirot's mind raced. He pocketed a sample of the residue, then inspected the vial again, levels lower than expected. Footsteps retreated. "Quickly, Hastings. Follow discreetly." Hastings slipped out, returning moments later. Charles, heading to the stables, looked shifty. Emily entered, pale. "What have you found?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Madame, your tea was tampered with. A trace of something insidious, perhaps arsenic, diluted to mimic illness. Tonight, we act." He orchestrated a ruse. Emily feigned fatigue, retiring early. Poirot hid in an alcove, Bob at his heels. Midnight struck. Shadows stirred. A figure crept in, gloved hand reaching for the nightstand vial. "Arrêtez!" Poirot emerged, lamp flaring. It was Miss Lawson, eyes wide in terror. I was just checking her medicine," she stammered. Poirot's voice was steel. "No, mademoiselle. You added the poison, subtle doses, to weaken, not kill outright. Why?" Tears streamed. "Not poison, just a sedative, to calm her rants. She's changing the will, cutting us out." Emily, roused, glared. "Traitor, out of my sight." Lawson fled, but Poirot stayed her. Not the mastermind, perhaps, a pawn. He turned to Emily. "Tonight, you're safe. Lock your door. Bob guards you. Tomorrow, we delve deeper." As the house settled into uneasy slumber, Poirot paced the hall. The immediate threat averted, a minor tampering exposed, but the air hummed with deeper malice. Whispers of greater plots lingered, like fog refusing to lift, drawing him into the estate's enigmatic heart. Chapter 2. Shadows of the past dawn pierced the heavy curtains of Little Green House like tentative fingers, casting elongated shafts of light across the dew-kissed lawns. The estate stirred awake, with the distant crow of a rooster and the muffled clatter from the kitchens below. Hercule Poirot, ever the early riser, had already donned his immaculate suit, his shoes polished to a mirror sheen, and his mind as sharp as a freshly honed blade. Sleep had been fleeting. The events of the previous night replayed in his thoughts. The quivering Miss Lawson, her confession of mere sedatives, and the undercurrent of something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface calm. He met Hastings in the breakfast room, where the aroma of kedgeree and fresh scones mingled with the tang of strong coffee. Hastings, rubbing his eyes, looked as though he'd wrestled with phantoms all night. "Poirot, that Lawson woman, do you think she's the culprit? Seemed too flustered for a cold-blooded poisoner." Poirot buttered a slice of toast with precise strokes. "Ah, mon ami, she is but a ripple on the pond. The stone that caused it lies deeper. Today, we excavate the family's buried secrets. History, Hastings. It is the soil from which motives sprout like poisonous weeds. Emily Arundell joined them shortly, her step firmer than the night before, Bob trotting loyally at her heels. The terrier's eyes darted about, ever vigilant. Monsieur Poirot, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, but the house feels heavier today, as if the walls themselves whisper accusations. Precisely, madame, Poirot replied, his green eyes twinkling. We shall make those walls speak. Summon your kin. A morning conclave is in order. The family assembled in the sunlit conservatory, a glass-domed haven, overflowing with exotic ferns and blooming orchids that lent a deceptive air of serenity. Teresa Arundell arrived first, her silk dressing gown flowing like liquid midnight, her expression a mask of bored indifference. Charles followed, yawning dramatically, his hair tousled in a calculated disarray that screamed of late-night escapades. Bellatanios and her husband entered arm in arm, she timid as a field mouse, he exuding a polished charm that Poirot found suspiciously rehearsed. Miss Lawson hovered at the periphery, her face blotchy from tears, avoiding all gazes. Poirot positioned himself at the centre, like a conductor before an orchestra of suspects. Mesdames et messieurs, last night's revelation was merely the overture. Now we delve into the symphony of your shared past. Madame Arundell fears poison, not a sudden strike, but a slow erosion. Who benefits from her frailty? Let us begin with you, Mademoiselle Teresa. Teresa arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, crossing her legs with languid grace. Me. Aunt Emily's always been the iron fist in our velvet glove family. Father died penniless after the war, leaving Charles and me to her mercy. She's doled out allowances like crumbs to pigeons, enough to tease, never to satisfy. Poirot leaned forward. And your pursuits. I hear whispers of artistic circles in London, perhaps entanglements that require funding. A flicker of defiance crossed her features. Art, hardly criminal. I paint, I socialize. If Aunt resents my freedom, that's her Victorian hang-up. But her fingers twisted a ring on her hand, a telltale sign of unease. Charles interjected with a roguish grin. Come now, Poirot. Teresa's harmless. Me, I'm the black sheep. Racing debts, a spot of bad luck at cards. Aunt's bailed me out before, but lately. He trailed off, shrugging. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Lately, monsieur, speak plainly. She's tightened the purse strings, says I'm a wastrel, but poison her. Absurd. I'd sooner charm a bank than kill kin. As the interrogation unfolded, Poirot wove questions like threads in a tapestry, drawing out fragments of resentment. Bella spoke softly of her marriage to Dr. Tanios, a union Emily had opposed, viewing the foreigner as an opportunist. He built his clinic with my dowry, she murmured. Aunt thinks he's after more. Tanios bristled, his accent thickening. Prejudice. I heal the sick, not harm the elderly. Amid the verbal sparring, Bob grew restless, pawing at a Persian rug near the conservatory door. Poirot noticed, excusing himself to investigate. Under the rug lay a trapdoor to a root cellar, its lock recently oiled, odd for a disused space. Descending the creaky steps with Hastings' lantern, Poirot found shelves lined with preserves and dusty crates. In one corner, a leather-bound diary caught his eye, half buried under sacks of potatoes. The diary belonged to General Arundell, entries spanning decades. Poirot flipped through yellowed pages, his breath catching at revelations, embezzlement, accusations against a brother-in-law, hushed-up scandals involving Charles' father and Emily's own notations in the margins, bitter addendums about ungrateful spawn and debts repaid in blood. One passage detailed a family curse, a tale of an ancestor poisoned over inheritance, echoed in modern fears. Emerging, diary in hand, Poirot confronted the group. This chronicle unveils motives aplenty. Greed festers like mold in these pages. Teresa paled. That's private. How dare you? But Charles snatched it, scanning furiously. Wait, here's something about me. A loan I never repaid. Lies. The room erupted in accusations, voices overlapping like storm waves. Emily snatched the diary back. Enough. These are old wounds, but they bleed anew. Poirot calmed the tempest with a raised hand. Peace. Yet this is not all. Bob, undeterred, nosed a nearby wicker basket, tipping it over. Chocolates spilled out, bonbons wrapped in gold foil, one partially unwrapped, revealing a crystalline dusting. Hastings knelt. Sweets? Harmless. Poirot sniffed cautiously. No. That scent. Bitter almond. No. Subtler. Arsenic masked in sugar. He produced a small testing kit from his pocket, a relic from past cases, dabbing a sample. The paper turned faint blue. Confirmation. Who placed these here? Emily demanded. Eyes darted. Miss Lawson whimpered. I brought them for tea yesterday. A gift from the village shop. Tanyos examined one. Laced, indeed, but crudely. Enough to sicken, not slay outright. Poirot's mind raced. A secondary attempt, or diversion. He orchestrated a search of personal quarters, starting with Charles. In the young man's room, amid racing forms and empty brandy bottles, they found a forged check. Emily's signature mimicked, drawn on her account. Charles protested. Not mine, I swear, someone planted it. Teresa sneered. Your gambling den friends, perhaps, always scheming. The confrontation peaked in the hallway, Poirot piecing accusations like a mosaic. Monsieur Charles, this forgery is amateurish, your handiwork, to fund vices while aunt weakens. Charles flushed. No, I admit debts, but not this. Bella interceded. Wait, I've seen that ink. From my husband's study. Tanyos recoiled. Absurd. Why frame him? Poirot smiled thinly. Not frame. Expose divisions. The true poisoner sows discord, dividing to conquer. In a flash of insight, Poirot tested the check's ink against Tanyos' fountain pen. A match. But Tanyos denied, claiming theft. The chapter's climax unfolded as Poirot revealed the forgery's flaw. A watermark dated post-General's death, proving recent creation. Someone forged this to implicate Charles, Poirot declared, but who benefits from sibling strife? Teresa broke. Fine, I did it. Not to steal, but to scare aunt into loosening funds. Harmless prank. Emily's face hardened. Harmless, in this house of vipers? Poirot nodded. Minor deceit exposed. You, mademoiselle, shall make amends. But this clears the air, restoring tentative trust. As the family dispersed, grumbling but relieved, Poirot lingered in the conservatory. Bob scratched at a spilled powder compact, Teresa's, perhaps, revealing a distinct paw print in the talc, not Bob's, smaller, feline. No, wait, it resembled a human thumb, smudged to mimic an animal. Hastings, Poirot murmured, a new anomaly. Not a dog's mark, but a clever ruse. The shadows lengthen, deeper machinations await. The morning sun climbed higher, but the estate's secrets burrowed further, a prelude to unraveling veils yet unseen. Chapter 3. The Silent Sentinel's Clue. Midday sun streamed through the mullioned windows of Little Green House, transforming the estate's somber halls into a mosaic of light and shadow. Dust motes danced in the beams like ethereal confetti, but the atmosphere remained charged, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation of further revelations. Hercule Poirot, impeccably groomed despite the mounting intrigue, paced the parquet floor of the morning room, his patent leather shoes clicking a rhythmic tattoo. Hastings lounged nearby, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea, his brow furrowed in contemplation. The events of the morning, the exposed forgery, Teresa's reluctant admission, had cleared some fog, yet new mists gathered, thicker and more insidious. Bob, the wire-haired terrier, sprawled at Emily Arundell's feet as she sat knitting by the window, her needles clicking in counterpoint to Poirot's steps. The dog's presence was unassuming, yet Poirot's gaze kept returning to him. "Ah, le chien fidèle," Poirot murmured. "The silent sentinel. In him lies the key to unseen truths. Animals, Hastings, they perceive what our senses overlook, the whisper of intent, the echo of stealth." Hastings set down his cup. "Bob, he's a fine fellow, but a detective. Come now, Poirot." Emily glanced up, her eyes sharp. "Don't dismiss him, Captain. Bob's instincts have saved me more than once. Last month, he howled at a tradesman who turned out to be a charlatan, and these past nights, his growls pierced the darkness like warnings from beyond." Poirot knelt beside the terrier, scratching behind his ears. Bob's tail thumped appreciatively, but his eyes held a knowing glint. "Tell me, madame, of these nocturnal disturbances, precisely, times, directions of his agitation." Emily set aside her knitting. "Around 2 in the morning, typically. He paces the corridor, sniffing at my door, then stares toward the back stairs. Once, he scratched at the pantry entrance as if pursuing a ghost." Inspired, Poirot rose. "Then we reconstruct. Hastings, fetch a leash. We take Bob on a guided tour. His reactions shall map the intruder's path." They ventured into the house's labyrinthine corridors, Bob leading with eager sniffs. The terrier tugged toward the servants' quarters, pausing at a linen closet. Poirot opened it, revealing stacks of crisp sheets and a faint, anomalous scent, medicinal with an undernote of cloves. Curious, not lavender, as expected. Bob whined, pulling onward to the back stairs, descending to the kitchen. Sunlight filtered through herb pots on the windowsill, casting green hues over copper pans. The dog circled the larder door, pawing insistently. Inside, shelves groaned with jars of preserves and sacks of flour. Bob nosed a particular shelf, dislodging a small tin of biscuits. Human treats, not canine. Poirot examined the tin. Sealed, yet. He pried it open. Inside, a hypodermic syringe gleamed, its needle capped but residue visible in the barrel. Mon Dieu, a tainted instrument. Hastings whistled. Poison delivery? Diabolical. Emily, who had followed, gasped. In my own kitchen, who could... Patience, madame. Poirot pocketed the syringe carefully. We test it later, but note Bob's precision. He recalls the scent. Continuing the trail, Bob led to the garden door, scratching at the threshold. Outside, the midday warmth enveloped them, bees droning amid rose bushes heavy with blooms. The terrier beelined to a tool shed nestled against the ivy wall, barking sharply. Poirot unlatched the door. Tools hung neatly, but a workbench held anomalies. A crumpled prescription pad, ink still fresh, and a stub of cigarette emitting that same clove aroma. The prescription bore Emily's name for a nerve tonic, but the dosage was inflated, potentially lethal if compounded with arsenic. Forged, Poirot declared. The handwriting mimics Dr. Tanios, but the flourish is off. An amateur's error. Hastings frowned. Tanios again, or someone framing him. Bob, undeterred, sniffed the cigarette. The visitor's mark, Poirot said. Exotic tobacco, perhaps Greek, like our doctor. But let us not jump to conclusions. Returning indoors, they convened in the study, a room lined with leather-bound tomes and a massive oak desk. Poirot laid out the finds: syringe, prescription, cigarette. These form a timeline. The intruder enters via the garden, hides the syringe in the larder, perhaps to contaminate food, forges the script for cover, smokes nervously. Emily shuddered. But why not strike directly? Subtlety, madame. A slow demise mimics natural decline, averting suspicion. As they pondered, Dr. Tanios entered, summoned by a maid. His face tightened at the array. What is this? My prescription pad, stolen from my bag yesterday. Poirot's eyes bored into him. Convenient, doctor. And the cigarette, your brand. Tanios hesitated. Clove. Yes, but common in my circles. Anyone could. A knock interrupted. Bella, bearing a tray of luncheon sandwiches. I thought you might be hungry. Her hands shook slightly. Poirot waved her in, but Bob growled low, hackles rising as she approached Emily's medication bottle on the desk, pills for her heart. Interesting, Poirot noted. The dog senses tampering. Bella froze. What? No, I. In a swift motion, Poirot intercepted the bottle, uncapping it. Pills looked uniform, but one was slightly discolored. He crushed a sample on paper, adding a reagent from his kit. It fizzed faintly, indicating adulteration. Potassium cyanide trace, enough to induce a heart attack. Bella paled. I didn't. I just brought lunch. Tanios stepped protectively. This is madness. Bella wouldn't. But Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. No, not her. Observe Bob. He growls at the bottle. Not her. The sabotage occurred earlier. Hastings suggested, let's trace who handled it last. A quick inquiry revealed Miss Lawson had refilled it that morning from the pharmacy delivery. Confronted, she stammered. I switched one pill, not to kill, to make her ill, dependent on me. She's naming me in the will. Emily's face contorted in betrayal. You, my companion. Poirot intervened, a partial truth. But the cyanide is potent, beyond mere illness. You are manipulated, mademoiselle. As tensions simmered, a maid entered breathlessly. A note, ma'am, slipped under the door. The envelope was plain, addressed to Emily. Inside, cease your meddling, or the next dose will be final. The shadows watch. Bob barked at the paper, sniffing intently. Poirot held it to the light. Watermark matched the prescription pad. The same hand. Our poisoner escalates. The chapter surged toward resolution as Poirot orchestrated a sting. He announced a faux departure, claiming the case solved with Lawson's confession. But secretly, he and Hastings hid in the attic, overlooking the hall. Twilight faded to dusk, the house creaking in the wind. Footsteps echoed, soft, deliberate. A figure emerged, Charles, gloved, approaching Emily's door with a vial. Hastings whispered, Charles, but... Poirot signaled silence. Charles paused, then knocked. Aunt, I couldn't sleep. About earlier. Emily opened, wary. What now? I found this. He produced the anonymous note. Wait, another. No, he was confessing. I wrote the note to scare you into vigilance, but the poisons, not me. Poirot emerged from shadows. Bravo, monsieur. A noble lie. Charles sagged. I suspected Tanios, his debts, wanted to protect her without accusing. But Bob, unleashed, bounded past, growling toward the stairs. They followed to the cellar where a loose flagstone hid a cache, more syringes, a ledger of embezzled funds. Tanios, caught fleeing, confessed partially. The clinic's failing. I borrowed, intended to repay. But poison. Never. Poirot pieced it. The ledger showed forgeries in Bella's hand. Confronted, she broke. I tampered with the pills, not to kill, but to hasten inheritance. Tanios knows nothing. Yet Bob's final clue, he nuzzled a hidden compartment, revealing a love letter from Lawson to Tanios. The affair, Poirot exclaimed. Motive intertwined, Lawson poisoned subtly, framing others, to claim Emily's wealth with Tanios. Lawson, overhearing, fled but tripped, confessing in tears. We planned illness, not death. The note, to stop you. Poirot nodded. Thwarted, justice beckons. As authorities were summoned, Emily sighed in relief. Bob, my hero. The dog wagged, the chapter closing on a triumphant note, yet a lingering whisper, an overlooked scent, hinted at veils yet to unravel. Chapter 4. Veils of deception unraveled. Twilight draped little greenhouse in a cloak of indigo, the sun's final rays bleeding into the horizon like spilled ink on parchment. The estate's gardens, once vibrant with midday blooms, now whispered secrets to the gathering dusk, their petals folding against the encroaching chill. Inside, the drawing room pulsed with an electric undercurrent, candles flickering in silver sconces and casting elongated silhouettes that danced like conspirators on the damask walls. Hercule Poirot, a figure of compact elegance in his tailored evening attire, stood at the room's heart, his moustache a precise arc of authority. The revelations from Bob's instinctive guidance still echoed. The affair between Miss Lawson and Dr. Tanios, their bungled attempts at subtle sabotage. Yet Poirot sensed the web's true architect remained shrouded, pulling strings from the periphery. He had summoned the household to this impromptu assembly, his voice brooking no refusal as servants relayed the command. Emily Arundell occupied her customary throne-like chair, her expression a fortress of resolve. Bob curled at her feet like a living talisman. The others filtered in with varying degrees of reluctance. Teresa, her emerald gown a defiant splash of colour, eyes flashing with impatience. Charles, rumpled and defiant, nursing a tumbler of whiskey. Bella, fragile as spun glass, clinging to Tanios's arm, and Lawson, red-eyed and subdued, trailing like a ghost. Even the staff, the gaunt butler Wilkins, the rosy-cheeked cook Mrs. Hubbard, and a distant cousin, Arabella Tripp, a spinster with a penchant for spiritualism, hovered at the edges, drawn into the vortex. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his accent a velvet blade slicing the tension. "We gather not for pleasantries, but for unmasking. The poisons that plague this house are not merely chemical. They are born of envy, woven from lies. Each of you harbors a fragment of truth. Together, we shall forge the whole." Teresa crossed her arms, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Another parlor game, Monsieur Poirot. We've confessed our petty sins, sedatives, forgeries. What more do you want? Blood?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Blood? Non. But alibis, mademoiselle. Let us commence with the night of the tainted nightcap, 2 weeks past. Where were you all when Madame Arundell retired?" A murmur rippled through the room. Charles spoke first, his tone casual, but his grip tightening on the glass. "Me, in the billiard room, practicing shots. Alone, if you must know. Clearing my head after a row with Aunt over funds." Bella fidgeted. "I was in the nursery wing, settling the children. They fuss in the evenings." Tanios nodded. "And I attended a patient in the village, old Mr. Peabody, his gout flared. Returned after midnight." Lawson whispered, "Reading in my room. Psalms for comfort." Wilkins, the butler, cleared his throat. "Polishing silver in the pantry, sir. Mrs. Hubbard can vouch. She was baking pies." The cook bobbed her head. "I That I was. Rhubarb, fresh from the garden. Cousin Trip, her lace collar quivering, added, communing with spirits in the attic. The veil thins at dusk. Poirot paced, absorbing the claims like a sponge. Convenient all, yet inconsistencies lurk. He produced a small notebook, flipping pages with flourish. Hastings, my friend. Recall the gardener's testimony this afternoon. Hastings, positioned by the door, nodded gravely. Indeed, old Jenkins saw a figure slipping from the herb garden around 11, carrying a bundle heading toward the kitchen entrance. Mrs. Hubbard flushed. Not me. I was inside. Poirot turned to Tanyos. Doctor, your patient, Mr. Peabody. A telegram confirms he slept soundly that night. No visit required. Your alibi crumbles. Tanyos stiffened. A mix-up, perhaps. I meant another. Non, Poirot interjected. You ventured not to heal, but to harvest. Nightshade from the garden, switched with harmless herbs in Madame's infusion. Gasps echoed. Bella clutched her husband. Impossible. Alexis would never. But Poirot pressed on, his narrative building like a crescendo. And you, Mademoiselle Teresa, your London artist. We telephoned your gallery friend. You were not there that night. Instead, a witness places you in the village apothecary, purchasing belladonna under a false name. Teresa's composure cracked, her laugh brittle. Belladonna? For cosmetics, nothing more. Women have secrets, detective. Ah, but intertwined with another's. Poirot gestured to the door, where Hastings ushered in a new figure. A tall, brooding man with a painter's smudged hands and a foreign accent. Meet Raoul Daubreuil, Teresa's paramour, an artist with a sideline in alchemy, fabricating illnesses through clever compounds. Raoul shifted uneasily. I know nothing of poisons. Poirot smiled coldly. Your studio yields evidence. Vials matching the switched poisons here. Nightshade for headaches, belladonna for delirium. You supplied Teresa, who administered them, feigning concern while eroding Madame's health. Teresa surged forward. Lies. Raoul paints portraits, not plots. Yet Raoul's defiance wilted under Poirot's gaze. She asked for remedies, said her aunt needed rest. I didn't know. The room erupted, accusations hurtling like thunderbolts. Charles slammed his glass down. You witch, framing me with that check to divert eyes. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the storm. Précisément, the secondary scheme, planting forgeries to implicate Charles, whose debts made him a scapegoat. But who orchestrated this diversion? Eyes turned to Cousin Trip, who blanched. Me? I speak with the dead, not deceive the living. Yet your spirits conveniently whispered of Charles' guilt during a séance last week. Poirot produced a Ouija board from beneath the cloth. Trip's own. Hidden compartments hold ink and seals matching the forged documents. You, mademoiselle, with your occult facade, masked a sharper motive. Resentment over a disputed inheritance clause buried in the general's will. Trip crumpled. He promised me a share for caring for Emily in her dotage, but she ignores it. Emily's voice thundered. Because you're a fraud. Seances for profit, now this. Poirot wove the threads tighter. The plot layers like an onion. Lawson and Tanyos for embezzlement. Teresa and Raoul for direct poisoning. Trip framing Charles to muddy waters. Fabricated illnesses. Headaches from nightshade. Nausea from belladonna. Mimicking age. Paving way for natural death. Wilkins, the butler, interjected tremulously. But sir, the staff. Ah, unwitting pawns. You polish silver laced with residue, transferred from handled vials. Mrs. Hubbard's pies, innocent, but her rhubarb patch bordered the poisoned herbs. The confrontations peaked in a whirlwind of admissions. Raoul confessed to supplying extracts, coerced by Teresa's promises of wealth. Tripp admitted planting evidence during her communions. Tanios, cornered, revealed overhearing plans but staying silent for Bella's sake. In the melee, Bob stirred, growling at a shadowed corner. Poirot followed, uncovering a hidden panel behind a tapestry, a cache of letters linking all. Teresa's correspondence with Raoul, Tripp's blackmail notes to Charles. Behold the nexus, Poirot declared. A conspiracy fractured, each veil torn. Emily rose, regal in fury. Arrest them all. But Poirot tempered. Justice, yes, but mercy for the misled. Lawson, repentant. Bella, innocent. The core culprits, Teresa, Raoul, Tripp, face the law. As constables, summoned discreetly, led the guilty away. The room exhaled. Charles poured fresh drinks, toasting shakily. To Poirot, the unraveler. Emily clasped his hand. You've saved me, monsieur. Order restored. Poirot bowed. For now, madame. Yet one thread eludes, the mastermind's whisper. Who unified these deceptions? A faint smile played on his lips as night deepened, the estate settling into fragile peace. But the air hummed with the promise of final reckoning. Chapter 5. The Poison's Reckoning. The full moon hung low over Little Greenhouse like a luminous pearl suspended in the velvet expanse of night, its silvery glow filtering through the estate's ancient oaks and casting ethereal patterns on the manicured lawns. A crisp breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from a distant village hearth, as if the world itself conspired to heighten the drama unfolding within. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the moonlit window of the Grand Library, adjusted his pince-nez with a deliberate flick, his mind a whirlwind of deductions, coalescing into crystalline clarity. The arrests earlier that evening, Teresa and her lover Raoul, the scheming cousin Tripp, had peeled away layers of deceit, but the core malignancy remained, pulsing like a hidden venom in the family's veins. The library was a bastion of intellect and intrigue, its towering shelves laden with tomes bound in calfskin and gold leaf, the air redolent of aged paper and polished mahogany. A fire crackled in the immense grate, flames leaping like eager informants illuminating the faces of those assembled. Emily Arundell sat at the head of a long oak table, her posture unyielding, Bob the terrier vigilant at her side, his ears twitching at every subtle shift in the room. The remaining suspects, Charles, Bella, Dr. Tanios, Miss Lawson, and even the butler Wilkins, occupied seats around the perimeter, their expressions a tapestry of apprehension, defiance, and weary resignation. Hastings stood sentinel by the door, his military bearing a quiet reassurance. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot intoned, his voice a resonant timbre that commanded the space. The hour of reckoning arrives. We have unravelled veils of minor treacheries, sedatives in tea, forged checks, switched herbs, but these are mere distractions, fireworks to obscure the true explosion. The poison that threatens Madame Arundell is not haphazard. It is orchestrated with the precision of a symphony conductor, each note building to a fatal crescendo. Charles leaned forward, his fingers drumming an anxious rhythm on the table. Then who, Poirot? We've hauled off the obvious culprits. Is it over? Poirot's eyes, cat-like in the firelight, fixed on him. Over? Non, mon jeune ami. The mastermind lurks among us, a shadow puppeteer who manipulated the others like marionettes. Consider the arsenic traces in the chocolates, the cyanide in the pills, the nightshade in the infusions, all calibrated not to kill swiftly, but to erode, to mimic the inexorable march of time. Why? To inherit without suspicion, to embezzle under the guise of benevolence. Bella's hands trembled as she clasped them in her lap, her voice a fragile whisper. But we've confessed our parts, the affair, the minor tamperings. What more is there? Ah, the affair, Poirot echoed, pacing with measured steps, the floorboards creaking under his weight like reluctant witnesses. Miss Lawson and Dr. Tanios, lovers entangled in financial desperation. Your clinic, Tanios, teeters on ruin, funded by siphoned estate monies. Yet your role transcends mere opportunism. He paused before a portrait of General Arundell, the stern patriarch gazing down with painted disapproval. The general's will, amended secretly last year, naming you, Tanios, as executor should Emily falter. How convenient. Tanios rose halfway, his olive complexion paling. Executor, a formality. I treated her ailments honorably. Poirot whirled, producing a sheaf of documents from his inner pocket, bank statements, pilfered earlier from Tanios's study. Honorably, these ledgers tell a different tale. Transfers disguised as medical fees, escalating as Emily's symptoms worsened. You prescribed the tonics, doctored the doses, all while romancing Lawson to plant diversions. Lawson sobbed, burying her face in her hands. He promised marriage, security. I only followed his whispers, switched a pill here, a note there. Emily's gaze hardened, her knuckles whitening on her cane. You, my trusted physician, poisoning me for profit. But Poirot raised a finger, silencing the outburst. Attendes. Tanios is cunning, yes, but not the apex. Observe the patterns. Each attempt escalated after family gatherings, when alibis blurred, and Bob, the dumb witness, his agitations peaked not at Tanios' scent, but at another's. The terrier, as if summoned, lifted his head, a low growl rumbling from his chest. All eyes followed as Bob trotted to the far end of the table, nosing insistently at Wilkins' polished shoes. The butler recoiled, his gaunt face twisting in alarm. What nonsense! The dog errs. Non, Poirot countered, his tone laced with triumph. Bob never errs. His nose detects the residue, arsenic powder, clinging like guilt. You, Wilkins, the silent observer, serving trays with tainted delicacies, polishing silver that transferred toxins. Wilkins stammered, absurd. I've served faithfully for decades. Poirot's narrative surged forward, weaving facts into an unbreakable chain. Faithfully, or vengefully. Your history, mon ami, buried in the General's diary, which I revisited this eve. You were his Batman in the war, accused of theft, demoted. The General coveted, but resentment festered. Employment here was penance, yet you plotted ascension. Charles gasped. Wilkins, but he's invisible. Précisément, Poirot said. The perfect veil. He overheard confidences, manipulated the others, whispering to Teresa of Raoul's alchemical skills, blackmailing Tripp with her fraudulent seances, even forging Tanios' signatures on embezzlement slips, the anonymous notes, your handwriting, disguised but betrayed by the butler's precise loops. Evidence mounted as Poirot laid out artifacts, a hidden vial from Wilkins' quarters, matching the syringe's residue, a ledger snippet linking him to offshore accounts, even a pawned family heirloom sold to fund escapes. You accelerated after Emily's will amendment, fearing exclusion. The poisons, cumulative, traceable only to family strife. Bob witnessed your midnight forays, his barks dismissed as whims. Wilkins' facade shattered, his shoulders slumping as he sank back. The General ruined me, branded a thief for a misunderstanding. I deserved recompense, slow justice, through her decline. The others were tools, greedy fools, I nudged. Emily's voice trembled with fury. Traitor in my home. Confessions cascaded. Tanios admitted complicity in the embezzlement, lured by Wilkins' promises. Lawson wept over manipulated affections. Bella, innocent, clung to her husband in shock. Charles, exonerated, vowed reform. Poirot, satisfied, summoned the constables waiting in the hall. Justice prevails. Wilkins, the conductor unmasked, faces the gallows shadow. As the guilty were led away, the library exhaled, the fire dimming to embers. Emily rose, embracing Bob. My loyal guardian, and you, Poirot, eternal gratitude. Poirot bowed. A pleasure, madame. The little grey cells triumph. Dawn broke as Poirot and Hastings departed, the train whistle piercing the morning mist. Little green house receded, its enigmas sealed, a testament to human frailty and detective brilliance. No threads lingered. The case closed, fulfilling and finite.